Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Curb Cutouts. Today we have a guest. Today's guest is Lilly Longshore, a writer, speaker, and now author of Lilly's Most Excellent Wheelchair Adventures, Wheeling, Washington State. She is legally blind as well as a C5, C6 quadriplegic. She is a retired environmental engineer with the love of the adventure and thrill of travel. She is a frequent contributor to both New Mobility Magazine and to PN Magazine. In today's show, we will be discussing from her new book, the top 3 accessible travel locations in Washington State. Welcome to the show, Lilly.
Hi.
So before we dive into your top 3 locations from your book, why don't you tell us the motivation behind making this book?
In doing research over the last 19 years or so of trying to find things to do from a wheelchair for family vacations, it was a lot of research, and I gathered a lot of information, went to these different places, and I actually documented this as I went along over all these years. I've been documenting all this stuff, and I just decided that there's just not that many books out there. We could always use another, even if there are some. We could always use another. Having lists of neat trails to go on, or neat museums to go to, or neat little towns, that kind of thing. And it's just stuff that I think is really cool and fun that I enjoyed on my vacations over the years. And I know it's wheelchair accessible because I rolled through it in my power wheelchair. So
that's awesome. Well, we know we definitely appreciate you making this book because, accessibility and access to trails is, unless somebody goes out there and checks, it's not documented. So for you to provide a book for people to say, hey, here in Washington State, here are all these accessible areas is just amazing.
Well, and then I also want to say is that when I went there, it was accessible, and if it had been a couple of years since I'd been there, I called Hurricane Ridge was one of the places. And I just to make sure, that nothing has changed. And actually they have improved that up there. They actually made it wider and repaved and that kind of stuff. So, it's just good to have the trails, like a list of trails and not just trails, but parks. And there's certain festivals and fairs and that kind of stuff that you can do. That's also very wheelchair. There's just a lot of things to do. And it's a variety. It's not just trails. It's a variety, which is how we vacation. That's with my family, that's how we vacation. We just do something that's fun for my son when he was little, something my husband might be interested in, something I want to do. So it's a mixture of things in the book.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead, and we decided to choose 3 locations from your book to go over. So let's go ahead and jump into the first location. Go ahead, Wada.
Yeah, thank you, Lily. Thank you for being on our show. And thank you for having the time to be with us.
And my pleasure.
You are an amazing host. It sounds like Long Beach is really beautiful. I never been there, but from your listening to your story over Kindles, and it sounds like a beautiful place to go to.
Long Beach is really neat.
What's make you choose Long Beach as a place you want to research or have it in your book?
It's not very far from here, so it's maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours to get there. And it's on the Long Beach Peninsula. So Long Beach and Ilwaco are side-by-side cities. There's just a lot to do. There's like maybe, I think about 4 state parks right there on that little peninsula. One of my favorites is Cape Disappointment State Park. And that's got a couple of lighthouses on there. One of them I can get all the way down right to the base of it. I can't get inside of it, but I can get to the base of it and see that same view of the ocean and everything. They have a few trails within Cape Disappointment State Park. Plus, it is an old fort. I can't remember the name of the original fort, but it was like an old World War II. Actually, I think it started in the Civil War. Some of those things started construction really a long time ago. So I know it was there during World War II for sure. So it's a historic fort. In addition to a state park, it also has the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Centers there. So it's really a neat place to go, and all of that stuff is wheelchair accessible. The Interpretive Center is, and they've got a trail that goes from the north side of Cape Disappointment State Park
Mhm.
all the way into Long Beach itself. So it's about 8
Wow.
miles long, and it's the Discovery Trail, and the whole thing is wheelchair accessible. It's mostly paved, and then it turns into a boardwalk when you get into Long Beach. And I think the photo that I gave you guys was that's actually the boardwalk once you're into Long Beach. And it really is a beautiful trail. You're right there by the sea grasses and the ocean and everything. It's just great.
Let me ask you this question: has always been accessible beach, or some advocate people with disabilities push for it?
I've been in a chair for 19 years. I went there 20 years ago, and I recall the boardwalk being there 20 years ago. I don't know about the whole trail. I don't know about that when the Discovery Trail was put in, but I know for sure that boardwalk was there, in the last 20, before I got into a wheelchair, So I think it's been accessible for a long time. Or at least portions of it has been.
Okay, what about the wheelchair beach? If I go there, how can I acquire one?
The beach wheelchair. The World Kite Museum, they are the ones that loan it out. It's owned by the city of Long Beach. I think that there was a couple that lived there, and I think the husband used a wheelchair, and he ended up passing away. And so the wife donated the beach wheelchair to the city of Long Beach.
That's awesome.
And the city of Long Beach, yeah, it was really good. The city of Long Beach, I should say, was really thoughtful of the widow to let other people have access, like her husband enjoyed, I'm sure. But at any rate, they needed to have some business kind of manage the loaning of it. And so the World Kite Museum was nice enough to manage that whole thing for free. And you just call ahead. I usually call like a week or so ahead. And you have to say, okay, I'm coming on such and such a date. And they give you 3 different time slots, and you can borrow it for a 2-hour period. And you just leave your driver's license and leave your wheelchair and take the beach wheelchair. It's my husband pushes me in it. It's not one that you can self-propel. Somebody has to push you in it, but they just push the block from the World Kite Museum down to that first entry into the beach area, and then have fun. It's really, really cool.
Okay,
Awesome.
you need some help, somebody to push you on the beach.
You do. You can't do it by yourself.
And how accessible was a wheelchair beach?
It was really nice. I mean, we were all over the place there. As a matter of fact, I don't think that I used the whole 2 hours. I mean, you can't really get into the water. They ask you not to get the chair wet. So I did get to the wet sand because it's just a lot easier to have somebody push you on the wet sand because it's harder. But it's just beautiful being out there. I mean, it's just nice to be close to the waves and just, where the seagulls are and all that stuff. So it was neat.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lily. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
What about what was the accessibility of bathrooms at Long Bay Beach?
Long Beach, they have a couple of places. They have a main entrance where the archway is, and I know that they have accessible restrooms down there, flush toilets that are definitely wheelchair accessible. And I'm trying to remember if there's a second place. I know I'm pretty sure there are 2 places, and I don't remember what streets they're on, but they're right on the beach, and I just don't remember what access, like the intersection.
But at least there's some there. Yeah.
And they're also they are also flush toilets. They're not like pit toilets.
Okay. Awesome. Perfect.
Yeah, there are two different locations. I think one of them is right where it's on the south end of where at the beginning of the boardwalk, on the south end of where the boardwalk begins. I'm pretty sure there's a wheelchair restrooms there. And then I think the other one is more toward town, kind of where the arch is.
Okay.
And I think Bolstad might be the road that it is labeled there.
I just know we might have some listeners that maybe want to know where the bathrooms would be. So.
Oh, and then as we're talking about cool things, I like sweets, God help me. But anyway, there's an awesome bakery that's called the Cottage Bakery that's downtown, and it's wheelchair accessible, unfortunately for me. And they've got some good stuff. So they've got a few, not every single shop is wheelchair accessible, but they've got a number that are,
okay.
So.
Awesome. Well, let's jump on to location number 2, Port Townsend, Washington. And John's going to ask these ones. Go ahead, John.
So in reading the book, I seen that there was a Fort Worden nearby. And I was wondering, it mentioned like 3 or 4 different forts making up a triangle. And I was just wondering, can you park at one and use your chair to get to all 3, or is it something that you have to get in the car and go to the next one?
You actually, there's one of them that's actually across the Strait of Juan de Fuca. So no, you can't. I have never done that. I know for sure that Fort Worden is right next to Port Townsend, and then I think it's Fort Casey and Fort Flagler are the other 2, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I know I think that the one that's like across the Strait of Juan de Fuca from Fort Worden, you actually have to use a ferry boat to get there. You have to take the ferry boat. So you can't do it in your wheelchair unless you can get on the ferry boat and do it on your wheelchair. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Fort Worden was the largest of those. And it's also really conveniently close to town. So that's why I kind of featured that one, the Fort Worden, because it's right next to Port Townsend.
So as far as the lodging goes, is that all in town? There's nothing on site or anything like that?
Fort Worden does have, and I've never spent the night at Fort Worden, but they do have what used to be the officers' houses, and they've converted them into hotel spaces or like vacation rental areas. Awesome. And they do have, I believe, 2 or 3 units that are rated ADA, not just wheelchair accessible. They're actually rated ADA. But that's just based on a phone call. I've not done that. I've not gone there myself and stayed there. I've visited and been all over the fort, but I haven't spent the night in the ADA rooms. But I'm told that they are ADA. It's really a cool fort.
You know what it says 430 acres. So how much time have you spent driving around? Have you gone through a whole battery, or are you a pushchair user? Or
I do power chairs. On my book is based on places that I've done in my power chair only, because it is really different. You know, it is different if you're in your manual chair versus a power chair. But and typically on road trips, I do my power chair. In Fort Worden, I've gone quite a ways through there. They've got boardwalks and like piers that you can go out and, out toward the ocean. And I've done a lot of that kind of stuff, but and then coming from, like a parking lot and going through the park to the edge of where they've got a lighthouse there. I've done that. And then, let's see, well, then the fort itself, I've gone up a grassy slope on top of the fort where you can actually see across the strait. And that has been really cool. I know that if it might be difficult in a manual chair, but the state park allows you to get a special key to go through some gate. They give you directions, and you can actually drive up there in your vehicle. If you can't do it in your like just say you have a manual chair and you can't get up the slope that way, then they allow you to drive your vehicle there, so you can also see the sights from the top of the fort. Yeah. Yeah, it's really pretty cool. And I think that started. I think they started building that like in the late 1800s. So it's been there for a very long time. And they still have like the gun turrets and cannons and all that kind of stuff there. And I think they decommissioned it after World War II.
Cool.
Awesome. Is it pretty accessible around the cannons and stuff like shown in this picture?
It is. It's pretty flat on top. It's flat and it's concrete. Okay. And there's different parts of it. So there's a part that I remember going up a grassy slope to on top of where the cannons were, and that the view would be the Strait of Juan de Fuca. So that was one part of it. And then on the other side of that fort area, they have I don't know if they're like where people like, I think they were, I don't know what the proper term is. It's like where people slept, like all the bunkhouse sort of thing, only it's like into it's a concrete area and it's kind of into the side of a slope basically. And you can go all the way on the bottom part of that. And then they have stairs that go up, and then they have some more stuff that's up there that I was not able to get on top of because it was just stairs going up. There wasn't any sort of gentle slope.
Gotcha.
And that was on the opposite side of the strait.
Okay. Awesome. That seems like
I was wondering about your battery management. I mean, how do you have any tips for that? Because it seems like a lot of these trails are a lot longer than what my wheelchair would go.
My chair goes, I can go like maybe 6 miles in my chair. I don't know. I don't know if that's typical or not, but it can go 6 miles.
That's pretty
typical.
Pretty typical. Anywhere from like 6 to 10 is normal for both power chairs.
Yeah, and I was just talking to somebody, and they were telling me, oh, actually, it was Ian of Ian's Ride, Ian McKay, and then a friend of his, Denise Smith-Irwin, and those guys have. I know my normal battery is like a group G22, and they were saying they have G24. And then Ian had some other specific thing that he used, but I actually called yesterday. I called and I was asking, can I get better batteries that have better longevity? And I was told, well, no, you would have to have like it would be like a different framework to get the G24 batteries, and just the G22s are the only ones that fit in my chair. So
modification
you have a Q6
required.
I think you have a Quantum Q6, right?
Yeah, mine is a Pride Quantum Qs. Yes, yeah, and soon to be an Edge. I'm going to get a new Edge, Pride Quantum
Edge 3.0.
I have no idea. It's whatever the new thing is, but it costs way too much.
Now I noticed the HD, the heavy duty ones will take a 24 battery.
Oh, really? That's interesting. I guess I don't have a heavy duty one.
I have my Forefront will take a 24 too, so it has a little bit longer range, but still, I think the maximum I can get is 10 to 12. And then that's pushing it. So
unless you switch to some sort of lithium-ion battery or something like that.
Yeah.
As soon as they come down in price.
Yeah. Yeah. I have not really looked into the longevity of batteries. I guess I'm pretty happy. Most of the trails that I go on are not really that long. I mean, like I've never gone, it seems to me on that Discovery Trail, I remember I did go, well, I guess I can go 8 miles because that thing's 8 miles long and I went that whole distance. But then somebody had to pick me up. I mean, my husband had to go get the van and come pick me up because there's no way I could turn around and go back,
Yeah.
And so I do pay attention, so like I know that like in the book I do mention there's a dike trail that it's a Washougal going east out of Washougal toward Beacon Rock, and that's kind of a gravelly. It's very flat and it just goes along the levee, but because it's just a little bit gravelly instead of just nice smooth asphalt, I can't go that whole. I can only go maybe 4 or 5 miles, and I just burn my battery out. So I have to pay attention. I do pay attention, and I err on the side of conservative. Even if I want to go further, I just stop because I don't want to get stuck somewhere.
Yeah, hills will make a huge difference too. My batteries get drained really quickly on any kind of hill.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Fort Worden really is pretty flat. I mean, the only hill you'd really deal with is just going up that slope, the grassy slope to the top of the fort, but you got to do it for the view. It's just really beautiful.
That's what it's all worth right there. Yeah,
it is. And then you could borrow beach wheelchairs there too, by the way.
Oh,
there's a the Governor's Committee for Disability Issues and Employment by Washington State's GCDE committee. They have a program where they can counties can apply for disability grants. And Jefferson County got a grant a few years ago, and with that money, they purchased a few of the beach wheelchairs, which they allow people to borrow for free at Fort Worden. That's where you get it.
Lily, can you tell me exactly what's a wheelchair beach?
A beach wheelchair?
Yeah, how they look like?
The beach wheelchair? There was a
also
picture
power
in my...
chair?
The manual chair with gigantic wheels, gigantic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, they're made out of like maybe 2-inch diameter PVC pipe. Do you know what that is? That white plasticky pipe? They're made out of that. And they are like really big and rectangular, and they have these giant wheels that kind of look like beach ball material, but they're gray.
Like a shower chair, basically, with a huge wheels.
Yeah.
Kind
of like
They're
a
really
shower
pretty
chair.
lightweight.
I know I went for camping with Oregon spinal cord injuries with adaptive adventure without limit, and we went for camping. And I know there's a guy named Dave, and he have like a bulldozer to me. It's I don't know. It's like I have a triangles, wheels, like a tanks.
Take wheelchair.
Is that the same? Is that the same?
You got to
thing?
do an advertisement for Dave's chairs.
Yeah, Dave's chairs. Are they the same or no?
No, different.
No. It's like you're talking about, I think, a track chair.
Yeah,
they're kind of like an all-terrain vehicle sort of thing. No, the beach wheelchair is it's made out of real lightweight PVC pipe, plastic type of white plastic pipe, and somebody has to push it from behind. An able-bodied person has to push it from behind. You can't self-propel it. So it's it's better than nothing, but you have to have an able-bodied person to help you.
It's got big, hard plastic balloon tires on it. They go right over the sand.
I think I know what are they. When I was in in Myrtle Beach, I actually got one for me, and it's really we went in the water with it, and it's really hard to get back when there is waves. It's really this stuff keep getting away from you. I really struggled to get back into it.
Wow, was it harder to push or something when it was wet?
Actually, I went down to the beach with my manual. Then they brought this wheelchair beach wheelchair, and it's really like all of like balloons to me. It sounds like it really does not stay on the water, keep floating and get away, and it's really hard to get it down and settle.
Because you're floating on the waves.
Float out into the ocean.
I keep flowing everywhere. I cannot grab it.
I'd love to see a video of that.
That must be why, because they're really strict there at Long Beach at the World Kite Museum. They tell you over and over again, do not get in the water with this. And I'll make you bet that's why. Because you can float away. What are you going to do? Yeah. That'd be bad.
I think my ex took some picture and video. It's so funny. If I get hold on those pictures and image, I will bring it to you. And let you see it. It's really,
for sure.
It's a really big struggle to get back into it, especially for people who are quadriplegic as well. I cannot hold it. I cannot grab it and keep floating.
Wow.
It's a way to climb back on it. Really hard.
Oh, I could totally see that. Well,
next time you need to put a tether in the sand so you can only go out so far.
but the kite comes in.
Right? So before we jump into our third location, I'd like to do an ad. So let's get through our curb cutout ad real quick, and then we'll jump into location 3 with Franklin.
About access or lack of proper accessible curb cutouts? Call or text our complaint line today at 505-695-CURB. Operators are not standing by, but we will air the complaints weekly after each podcast. Thanks for helping us raise awareness to lack of or access to proper curb cutouts.
So again, just want to remind everybody to please call in with any of your curb cut issues you have or sidewalk issues. We want to hear about it so we can add it to the end of the podcast. All right, Franklin, this is all you, sir.
I was going to ask you about Port Angeles. Were you able to get there when it wasn't raining?
Oh, I've been there several times. And the summertime's the best.
And
so I've been there when it's raining, and I've been there when it's not raining. So we've gone there several times because it really is a beautiful area, a really beautiful area. But yeah, you're right. It does I remember I think the most recent trip that I was maybe in 2019, I guess. It was like rainbows everywhere. I mean, it was just amazing. It was, because it was that mist, and the sun was trying to come out. So it was rainbows everywhere. It was actually really awesome. Beautiful. So, yeah.
I'm familiar with Forks, and that's not very far from there. So that was one of the things. What was your favorite spot up there for accessibility?
Oh gosh, Port Angeles is just wonderful. Well, I like Lake Crescent. I also like Hurricane Ridge, and I like Port Angeles itself, like the waterfront. They have a great waterfront. So I don't know. I will be one of those three. The Port Angeles itself, they seem to have a lot of festivals and that kind of stuff on the waterfront. So we've been there before when they had like some sort of a music festival going on, which was really cool. And and then their restaurants and stuff are really nice. And the sidewalk and pier that they have that's right there is just very easy in a wheelchair, and it's just a lot of fun. And then the Hurricane Ridge, which is part of the Olympic National Park, is a wonderful area too. That's really neat because they're up there in the mountains, and again, that also has a good view across of the Strait of Juan de Fuca. It's on top of the mountains, and so it's hillier, and I couldn't do I couldn't do it in a manual chair, but I can in my power chair. So from the Hurricane Ridge Lodge across the parking lot and then up the Hilltop Trail, which is the one that they just redid and reopened August of 2020, and I haven't been there since. I haven't been on the new trail, but they just made it wider and better and all that kind of stuff. But it still goes to that same overlook, which is really a beautiful overlook. And it was certainly not that hard to do in my power chair when I was there last time, and now it's actually improved. So that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful place to go. So as is Lake Crescent.
Port Angeles is quite old, though, right? I mean, isn't there a lot of older buildings there that aren't accessible, or didn't you not see that?
I guess I just looked at the stuff that I could do. I didn't go to the museums. I tend to stay outside a lot. I tend to do the stuff that's outside. So I didn't go. I didn't even know if I guess I didn't check out the museums in that area. I just really like the waterfront area, and that's totally accessible. And then, of course, restaurants, and I would just go to the ones that I could get into. So it is hilly. Port Angeles is hilly. And I did stay a couple of different places. I've stayed at like their Super 8 motel, which isn't really expensive and it's wheelchair accessible, but it's, a Super 8 motel. And then I did stay at another one that was, I think, like the Port Angeles Lodge or something like that, which cost quite a bit, but it was, it was nicely accessible. But yeah, you're right. They do. It is hilly, and I think that inherently makes it harder to make things accessible. But they just have so much nature in that area. That's just so much beautiful nature. Lake Crescent's not very far from there, and that the lodge there. I have not stayed there, but I have been into like their restaurant / bar area. Even though it's an old lodge, that is accessible. And they have a pier that goes out into Lake Crescent itself, and that was accessible. And I know I've been on a part of the Spruce Railroad, but not the whole thing. But that's an accessible trail for miles, that Spruce Railroad is. And they have a new trail that it's Jefferson County and Clallam County, and I think another county. They're all working together to do their it's something Discovery Trail. It's also a Discovery Trail up there, and that's like all the way from Port Townsend all the way to La Push, which is on the coast. So it's like, I don't know, 40 miles or something. I mean, it's a long trail, and that right now they only have like sections of that's open, not the whole thing, but they have like 15 miles here and 10 miles there. So it's yeah. I look forward to going back up there and checking that out.
I got to thank you for your descriptions. You're very descriptive about how beautiful it is, and I know how beautiful it is up there because I've been, I've been there. I used to fly kites quite a bit, so we've been to Long Beach and Ocean Shores and all the way up to Port Angeles and stuff like that. So it's real. It's neat to relive that again because I go through the thing of how hard it is to travel for a disabled person. I mean,
it is.
And how disappointing it can be when you get there and you talk to them on the phone and they say that, it is accessible, and then you get there and there's stairs, and it seems to be very frustrating. I was wondering if you've come across that very much, where they'll tell you, oh yeah, it's just it's accessible, and then you find out it's not, or like even the bed is not the right height, or toilet's not accessible, and all that kind of stuff. I was wondering if you found that. I mean,
yeah, I have. I know that the first, I got hurt in 2002, and one of the very first road trips that I took, I went with my sister up to Victoria, Canada, Victoria, BC. And I just assumed that I would just stay in an accessible room. I mean, I didn't even plan ahead. I just, let's get in the car and go, so we'd never been there, and gee, wouldn't this be fun? And so I get up to Victoria, and it gets, close to time when we should, maybe eat and find a room and stuff. I made literally like 15 phone calls to 15 different places, and nobody had a wheelchair accessible room. It was horrible. And so we ended up staying in some place that was like, okay, well, this is good enough. I guess I can get through the door. And I was able to hold on to like the sink and take one step and flop down onto the toilet, that kind of thing. And I just remember in the morning trying to get dressed. It was such a struggle. There wasn't enough room between the bed and the wall. And I mean, it was a struggle. And I remember after like an hour of struggling around to get dressed in the morning, I just said, I'm ready to crawl back in bed. I am exhausted. It was really miserable. And so after that one miserable experience, I decided I am calling ahead. I am calling ahead. I am planning. And so from that day, I have called, and if I'm going to stay somewhere, okay, measure the entry door. I will not take, oh, gee, yeah, we're accessible, because, what they think is accessible and what I think is accessible may not be the same thing. So I make them go and measure. And if they won't do it for me, I don't stay with them.
That's exactly my experience. So I'm so glad to hear that you do that, because that seems to be the only way to be able to find out, is get exact measurements, because they say everything's accessible because they're fine. They don't see the steps that are right there. It's like,
that's the thing. Is it step-free entry? It's just amazing to me, like on the not on Airbnb, but on like the VRBO or HomeAway, they'll have it marked as wheelchair accessible. I was looking for, like in Puerto Rico, when I went to Puerto Rico one year, I really wanted to stay in like some sort of a VRBO type thing, and you can email through their system, and I was asked, is there a step-free entry? And is this wheelchair accessible? Is it step-free? And how wide are your doors? All that. And they'll say, oh yeah, everything's on one level after you come up the first 2 steps. And I'm just thinking, okay, so you're going to be up there to pick me up and put me up there, or what? Anyway, which actually in Puerto Rico is exactly what they do. There are people that just come out of the woodwork to, oh, do you need help? And they pick you up and set you where you need to go.
There you go.
Yeah.
I got to ask you, I got to plead with you. Please do one for Oregon. I think that would be fantastic. And I think that's something that you should do in the future, as well an international one as you travel around.
I could do that. I actually could do that. Oregon, I know that a group was working on getting something started, and I wish I could. I just remember Evita Rush. Evita Rush? She was working on that, and I don't remember who all she was working with. And I just remember they had, and it's been recently. It's been like in the last maybe 6 months, where we submitted ideas, and then they selected, I don't know, 7 or 8 or whatever it was, and then they actually did put out kind of it was a very short, basically a PDF document type of thing. I'll have to look for it, because I know I have it.
I was one of them.
Oh, were you? Okay.
Vita, with the Oregon Spinal Cord and Adventure Without Limit, and we did find some recreations and some areas.
What was the name of that?
I forgot the book name. Yeah, we did a small booklet actually.
That's pretty short.
Yes,
and it was very well done. It was very, very well done. I really liked it. It had descriptive information, but it was only like maybe, I don't know, 10 places. Do you remember, Wada, how many entries?
I participate really small part of it, and I drop off. I do not understand exactly what they need. You have to have a description of a place where you went to, and recommend it to the people, and I think I have a vague view of it. I just part of it little time. Just my question is, I have a question for you. I know I went to Victoria and through Port Angelo. And when I went to there, I really struggled. I parked my car. I have my handicap stickers, and I put it on the street. Then I was surprised the Canadian side they gave me a huge ticket and I was unexpected. So most places in like Long Beach and the park you described in your book, accessible parks and recreations, do they also have a free parking, or you have to pay for it?
Fort Worden definitely had a big old parking lot. In the state of Washington, they require a discovery pass to enter the state parks. However, if you have disability plates, that's your discovery pass. So you don't need, if you have a disability tag or disability plates, you don't need your discovery pass.
That's good.
And then the same thing with the federal places, the national parks and Bureau of Land Management parks and national forests. There is something called a national access pass that you can buy one at Fort Vancouver here in Vancouver. They used to be free, and then they went up to like $10, and it's a lifetime. It's a lifetime pass. I think now they're more like, I don't know, $70, but again, it's lifetime. And then you get into any national park, national forest. If you're in the Smoky Mountains, if you're in, Oregon, and you want to go to the Yaquina National that recreation area, it's a Bureau of Land Management park. You don't have to pay any fees for the rest of your life. Going up to like Mount St. Helens, normally they would you have a fee to go into their to what is it called, Johnston's Ridge Observatory. It's free. You just show them your pass and you go. Williamsburg, Virginia, you would get in, to certain parts of it. There's part of it that's commercialized, but then part of it is like a national park type of thing. And they just waive the fee because you have your national access pass. So
That's
I get
awesome.
into everything for free, whether it's Washington state stuff or national stuff. I have those passes and I get in free.
How do you apply for access?
The national access pass.
National access.
Yeah.
I just went in person down to Fort Vancouver to the ranger station and just in my wheelchair and just said, "Hey, can I get one of these?" And at the time,
that's-
actually, it was free. They just gave it to me. As a matter of fact, I got two of them. I lost my first one, not realizing the value of it. But I was at Mount St. Helens, and the lady who was taking money as people came through, she said, "You realize, she asked if I was permanently disabled, and I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, you can get this national access pass, and it's free of charge." Now that was probably back in 2005. And so I said, "Ooh, great. I got to have some sort of perks here, And so I got that for free. And then I was somewhere else and I had forgotten it. And I was actually in Williamsburg, Virginia, and I had forgotten my access pass. And so wherever I was over there, they just gave me another free one. And that one I still
works.
have. Yeah. And that was probably in 2012 that I got that second free one. And since then they started charging for it. And just don't lose it. And it's $70 and you don't ever have to have another one.
Yeah, don't lose that money.
No, once I was in St. Louis, Missouri, and under the arch, there's a museum down there. There's a guy, he saw me, being in a wheelchair, and he called on me, he hollered, and he said, "Hey, are you permanent?" I said, "Yes, I'm permanent disabled." He said, and they give me golden pass. Is that the same as
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Wow.
It's the
okay.
national. Yeah, it's like it's a credit card material, right? Like a plastic. Yeah. Oh, hold on to that. That thing's valuable.
Okay,
And
I
you
thought,
can get.
you pay only for federal, but for state, you don't pay for federal. Maybe you pay half for federal, but you have to pay for state park.
On the Golden Access Pass, that's federal. And then in the state of Washington, your disability plate is equivalent to having a discovery pass. It's equivalent to having a state park pass. Just if you have a
qualifies,
disability plate. Yeah, it qualifies you. In the state of Washington, I don't know what it's like in Oregon. That's a state by state thing.
Yeah, we'll have to look that up. Don't know the info on that.
Yeah, I do a lot of that kind of stuff. I really like the outdoor stuff. And there is quite a bit that you can do, both in Washington and in Oregon. That where there's trails and just historic things to see. And, so there's a lot that's here. You just need to look for it.
Yeah, gotta get out there and check it out.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing of this podcast is just get out there, explore. You know, I know that Lily's book strictly covered Washington, but she does have a website that does have travel articles from different locations, not just Washington. So I suggest you guys check it out. I will be putting a link to her book you can purchase on Amazon and a link to her website that you can basically read her articles and get in contact with Lily if you have any questions of any of the trails or anything from her book. Any last minute questions at all, guys, for Lily?
Yes, for me, what's your next project, Lily?
Oh,
Are you working on something?
I am thinking about, there's a couple of different things. I'm thinking about expanding the Washington State book because there's always things that I can add. And I was considering interviewing some people and adding some of what they do, but I'm kind of up in the air of whether I want to do that or not. I know when I go through it, I know exactly if I would recommend it or not. So I just need to decide whether I want to do things based on interviews or not. Because I could expand what I cover without me having to do every single thing. But then, I need to make sure I trust my source, So I'll either be doing something with that. I have thought about Oregon, doing one on Oregon State, because I've been to a lot of really wonderful places. Ben's got some neat things.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to a lot of, and I love like the Fruit Loop around Hood River. If you guys have been on the Fruit Loop, have you guys been on that?
Not yet. No.
Really cool. Well, I'm a farm girl. I grew up in Ohio in the Midwest. And so I love going to all the farm stands. And so the Fruit Loop starts in Hood River and it loops around 36 different farm stands. So you can go to like hazelnut orchards and blueberry farms and apple orchards and lavender farms. And, what else did they have? Those animals, those not llamas, alpaca farm. They have like 36 things that you can go through. And they even have cider houses and wineries as well mixed in there. And it's really a cool thing to do. And lots of those are wheelchair accessible. And so, I've got things like that I would put on. I stopped. I drew the line at the Columbia River. Okay. Even though I knew just down the road is the Bonneville Dam and just down the road is Molten Falls, I had to make it stay in Washington State, because you have to put boundaries somewhere. Otherwise it just rambles on forever,
Exactly.
And so I might do an Oregon one, but I need to talk to Evita and the people who are working on that project to make sure I don't conflict, so.
Well, if you make an Oregon book, we'll have you back on and we'll talk about the Oregon trails. So places.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got to ask you if you made the title of the book from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures.
I did. I did. It's the most excellent.
Yeah, exactly. Fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It made me laugh.
Awesome. Well, Lily, thanks for being our first guest on the Curb Cutouts podcast. We really appreciate
my pleasure.
It. And
I like your commercial too, by the way.
Oh,
we
thank
got to
you.
get people reporting, get more of those curb cuts out there.
Yep. We want to hear about it. Yep. Call that number 505-695-CURB.
That's great.
All right.
Well, thank you guys.
Yep. And thank you everyone for watching the second episode of the Curb Cutouts podcast. All right.